In China, you are discouraged to say, I feel depressed. You say, I do not feel well in my body. I am tired, I am overtaxed, I can't work, I don't feel like doing these things, not because I'm emotionally depressed, something's wrong with me, so it gets this diagnosis of neurasthenia. It's just it's a cultural thing. So therefore, it's not surprising that, and the big pattern is the person feels fatigued. In order to have normalcy of sleep rhythm, we have to have a full brain. Even the so-called sleep rituals through which your body falls asleep. You know, when you go to sleep, people often do this elaborate thing of getting in just the right position. They got their pillow in a certain way, their arm under the... And then at the moment they fall asleep, there's often a movement happens. They mess up all that stuff. That's where yin and yang exchange positions, creates that final movement. You can see this with kids if you watch them as they fall asleep. They often do that. And kids love regular, orderly routine. That's actually tonifying their spleen. If they don't get that, their spleen suffers as a result. If we have a kid with a learning disorder and they can't read, tonifying the spleen usually helps that. If they're delayed in their... Whereas math skills tend to be much more liver. That's interesting. Regulating liver qi helps kids who struggle with math. And you treat the Down syndrome kid and clear the dampness, their performance improves. Treatment of the centers is to regather the Shen when it's been dispersed from the body. Some emotional circumstance, emotional trauma. So this is considered like one of those, we mentioned yesterday that the ling, the soul, has been dispersed out of the body. People will say, I've never been the same after that happened. So I would say in like these traumatic brain injury things, you're accumulating bad water from the trauma, the blood doesn't move, the water accumulates, and as a result, you're getting yin deficient, so you get anxieties and these kind of low-grade heart heat issues that come out at the same time, that you drain that water. So open the water channels, if the person has dementia, will often make them more clear-headed. And so in that sense, things like Wuling San and Zhuling Tong and those kind of formulas can help the person think clearer and remember better. It's always better to needle a point before you moxa, my teacher would say. But moxa on the handle of the needle is for a specific effect. My teacher used to call bladder 17 the Dongui point. Because like the herb Dongui, which builds and moves blood, bladder 17 does the same thing. And so we often call Dongui the qi of the blood. Stomach 41 is the best point to counteract that. It's like an antidote to your upset stomach from your herbs are too cloying or difficult to digest. Chinese medicine says our bodies get programmed with 7 generations of behavior. So staying up late always taxes the liver. I don't care how long you do it, how adjusted you become to it. Somebody who does night shift work, for example, will always benefit from liver blood tonics. Maybe you know this herb, Xuan Fu Hua, is the only flower that has a descending action. Schizophrenic patients who aren't responding well to their meds, their Western meds, if you give them this formula, their meds start to work. These are exorcistic in that they take some kind of entity out of the person. They're actually, because he in another writing, he makes a comment that you should relate to the person in terms of their belief structure. Like my old Korean teacher talked about this so often. He'd say, oh, you Americans, you have no grandmothers. And the reason for that is when he would come to America and treat patients, people would come to him and ask him questions he never got asked in Korea. How should I eat? What should I do during my pregnancy? He said, what do you mean, what should you do? Ask your grandmother. You come to me? Everybody knows what you do, you know? But no, nobody knows here what to do, you know? And just think of that, how we're, and he would say, you have so many choices to make. It's very stressful. Less choice is better. As I said earlier, remember too that these treatments around it, I will provoke emotional release. Cataracts are usually damp heat in the liver produces cataracts. The heat is congealing the damp, and that's what causes the opacity of the lens. You know, that story you told me really helped me because I started to make some changes. I took on less, or I tried to to make, like the greater yin people will often be so helped by your strategizing with them about how to implement change. I'm never telling them how acupuncture works. People ask that question. They don't want to know that. Most people. They don't want to know, well, I put the needle in and it's this wood point and the wood is the mother. Oh, yeah. I see practitioners describe like that. It's just, what they're really asking you when they say, how does acupuncture work? Is it reasonable for me to do this? Can it help me? That's what they're really asking. So I usually go, I have a funny response, actually, when patients say, does acupuncture work? I always say, how does acupuncture work? I always say, oh, it works really well. That's how it works. I don't like to accuse people of being certain things. I tell them stories. That's another thing that works for me. I like to be a storyteller. So I tell patients stories. I'm treating them. And I say, Chinese medicine has this really curious idea that there are basically 4 types of people. I'm just telling them some, information. I'm not telling them who they are. And I'm putting the needles in and I'm saying, yeah, we got this type, the greater yang type. He's like this, and we have this. And that's another part of healing, right? You want a person to sort of have an understanding of how disease occurs in our model. And so this type of person goes along at a very high level of activity and then suddenly drops dead. They have a stroke, a heart attack, something like that, boom. Because it takes a lot of qi to die quickly. For yin and yang to separate dramatically, you have to have excess there. People who have autoimmune disorders like MS will have had a significant febrile disorder during adolescence. The low affect disorders are usually caused by deficiency or stagnation. The high affect disorders are usually caused by heat.
So you move a little bit fast between Wendantang and Vanchiakopu.
Wendantang is, it unblocks, and it then blocks at the stomach level, kind of. So it's more in the middle, whereas if it's in the upper part, Vanchiakopu is more upper.
It's not open to change.
Well, there is something to that. They don't like new foods or new things, or they know it's going to be bad. I know I'm not going to like that. I don't even have to try it.
Would you say it's more a matter of control or more a matter of needing to be indulged?
I would say in this context, it's probably more a matter of control, because that feels like the liver thing to me. Because the heart controls the whole of the ear. Not the hearing mechanism, but the whole of the ear itself. So often we see inflammatory things develop in the ear after some kind of heart agitation thing. And people say this is for urinary tract bleeding. By the way, this formula is great after prostate surgery. It is for urinary tract bleeding. And people recover a lot faster and have a lot less side effects from their, if they do transurethral prostate resections and things like that. This is like kind of a must prescribe. You just give them this. It's better to treat the person for the more obvious things first. This is in contradistinction to a lot of strategies that you'll run into. There are those people that say, you got to go for the root. You always have to look for this deep, long-term pattern. The symptoms are sort of distractors in a way, and they want to see who this person is and then focus on that deep issue. And that's often a question of changing your strategy as you go. Often, once the symptoms are better, you've treated the overt complaint they have, then we have to think about, do I need to do something else by way of long-term maintenance? The canines here are the ones that go to the liver. Kids with liver stagnation have trouble losing those baby teeth. Kids who bite other kids or something, that's a real sign of liver heat. And that's why I just peel that onion. I clear the pathogens, I relieve the liver stagnation, I get the digestion working well, and over the long term build up their blood and yin. Okay, go home.